Hello, and welcome to another lesson about language development. In this lesson, we're not going to talk so much about language development. We're going to talk about one of the things that children are going to have to learn as they progress through developing their language. So this is more a lesson about languages than it is about language learning. But if you're going to understand how to learn a language, you have to know what it is you're learning. So this is one of the first things that children have accessible to them because of the way that hearing develops and because of what you can hear even before you're born. Intonation is one of the first features of language that an infant will have access to in order to learn something about the language that they're going to be speaking. So when we talk about intonation in linguistics, we're talking about pitch and frequency patterns in an utterance. And individual languages will use these sorts of intonational patterns, varying the pitch from high pitch to low pitch over the course of saying something in order to send messages. So for example, in English, we can say the word Amelia by itself to mean a lot of different things, right? So you could say the word Amelia as an answer to what's your name. And in that case, you would say it as Amelia, right? Where you start sort of high-ish, you get higher, and then you drop toward the end of the sentence quite steeply. So Amelia, right? So that's how you say Amelia is my name, or that's Amelia there, right? You can also use the word Amelia to figure out if somebody actually said Amelia a minute ago, right? So Amelia, was that what you said? Amelia, right? Amelia, right? If you think of it slowly, you can figure out that pitch contour. It can also mean it's your turn to talk in class now, Amelia, right? So if your teacher calls on you to read the next chapter, for example, and they say, Amelia, right? That's, you go, Amelia, as in you talk next, Amelia. You can also use it to mean, what are you doing here, Amelia, right? You can say, Amelia, I didn't expect to see you here. Amelia, right? That means something different. You can also use it to mean behave, right? Amelia, right? Don't do that, Amelia. How could you, right? So these are all different ways of saying Amelia that a child is likely to learn as they're experiencing their language, and they're going to have to learn what these different contours of pitch mean in the alteration of what that person is really meaning when they say the word Amelia. And these can vary not only between languages, but also between dialects. So for most British speakers, when they want to do this "you can talk now, Amelia" meaning, right? So which American English speakers usually say Amelia, right, is how you get called on in class. In British English, you say Amelia, right? It drops in the middle. And this is something that I'm sure most American English speakers have heard, but it's more common to do it this way in British English than to do it this way, right? And so a child acquiring British English would be more likely to acquire this for this meaning, right? But this is only accessible once you start being able to understand words and things like that. And that is, as we've talked about, not accessible data for a child acquiring language still inside the womb. So what kinds of intonational patterns might you learn even before you're born? So let's look at that. So this is the intonation pattern associated with questions and answers in English, in American English, right? So when somebody asks a question, they say, "Are you going to the zoo?" And then the person answers with, "I'm going to the zoo," or "I'm going to the zoo," right? Something like that. It drops at the end, right? And so if you're in the womb, you're likely to be able to hear people asking questions and getting them answered, right? So, what time is my appointment? Your appointment is at 2, right? So you're going to hear a lot of those in the womb. And so you're going to start figuring out that when someone goes da-da-da-da-da, another person's going to go da-da-da-da-da, right? So you're going to start figuring that kind of stuff out even before you're born. And this is in contrast to other languages where they might do the same thing using a different contour, right? So in another language, you might give a question by going da-da-da-da-da, right, for example, and then the other person would say da-da-da-da, and, you know, that would be how they would answer it, right? So what time is my meeting? Your meeting is at 2. Right? That doesn't sound very English, right? To use that intonation contour, but that might be one of the things that you're learning about your language before you're born, and that is what helps neonatal children to recognize the language that they are learning so quickly, is that they've already heard some of these intonational contours, and they can tell that sounds like a weird pair for English. You know, this is what I expect to hear in English, right? Here's another thing that you might be paying attention to. So if you've got two speakers having a conversation, and one of them says, yeah, I went to the zoo yesterday, and there I saw a lion and some hippos, right? So you indicate that you're going to keep speaking even though you paused by going up a little bit at the end, right? So I went to the zoo yesterday and I saw a lion and some hippos. And then finally go down when you're really done talking. And that's when speaker 2 comes in and says, oh, I really love seeing hippos, right? In other languages, this might work differently, right? So you might say, I went to the zoo yesterday and there I saw a lion and some hippos, right? That doesn't sound very English. There I saw a lion and some hippos, right? And then this person would say, oh, I love the lions and the hippos, right? Whatever it is, right? So this is a different kind of intonational contour that would help you send different messages. And so a child who's just been born, having listened to English the whole time they were in the womb, may be thinking, may know that when somebody ends an utterance by going up, they're going to keep talking, right? So they may even have that knowledge by the time they're born already. All right, so this has been a little mini lesson about the kinds of intonational patterns that little children have to be acquiring. I hope you enjoyed.